Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another chapter of Experiencer Interviews. And today we got another amazing story coming to us from New Zealand. We have Ginny Jones on today. Ginny was born near Stonehenge, a powerful Stargate in the UK. She now lives in New Zealand. Ever since she can remember, she has sensed spirit and energy signatures on multi-dimensional levels, often tapping into different timelines and seeing spirit and events unfold. Ginny has been working with the Arcturians, many galactic and spirit beings, for several years. She has had her DNA activated by her spiritual team and constantly getting downloads of new light, energy, and coding, which is activating her multi-dimensional innate being and adjusting her field. Ginny feels this is for the work she's doing and is yet to do. Ginny now works with light-coded technology. She is a multi-dimensional healer, quantum light DNA activator, intuitive reader, Ghostbuster, soul rescuer, transformational life coach, and ET contact group facilitator. She also channels personal multi-dimensional coded designs for people. When these designs are worked with or meditated with, they often have a profound effect on the person and their life. All of Ginny's work is done distantly online via Zoom or via phone. She works with many different beings, spirit, interdimensional, and ET. She is able to tap into the highest frequency of the cosmos, the collective, the God source, the diamond light, and the violet ray of transformation. She draws these energies down into the space she's working in, creating a space of pure love and light harmony that is multi-dimensional in nature. She loves what she does and feels very blessed to be able to live this life. All of Ginny's work is carried out with the highest integrity, with love and light. She's here to make a difference. Beautiful. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, you said that you grew up in the UK in England. So how close were you from Stonehenge?
Okay, I was born at home. Funnily enough, when I look back, the sun was just rising apparently, because I remember my mum saying, she said, I can't remember exactly what time it was, but the sun was rising. So on a Sunday as well, on a sunrise. And the actual house we were in is roughly about a 20-minute drive from Stonehenge in a little village, sort of in the middle of nowhere, I think. So I was born there, and I mean, I didn't really know much about it at the time, of course, because I was very, very young. We seemed to move around a lot. My earliest memory of something strange happening, I think I've got a vague memory of, I must have been lying in a cot or something, and something coming over me. But that is such a vague memory. I can't even really explain that. But it was probably around the age of, I think it was probably about 6 when I started to experience otherworldly things. And I was petrified of it. Like many of us young ones are, absolutely scared stiff of it. But going back to Stonehenge, I believe I've visited there several times since, and I believe the energy of Stonehenge goes out way further than what the actual stones do. And if you look at some of the history of it, they've even found things under the ground, and then there's the town that's got stones around it, which is very near Avebury, I think it is, which is very near, which is all connected to that. And some of the history of Stonehenge has been, there was an event happened, I think it might have been back in the 60s, 1960s, when some young people disappeared there. There was like a flash of light, and then all of a sudden they were disappeared up there, and their belongings were all found, but there was no evidence of them at all. So they were, I don't believe they died or anything. I actually believe that they were taken off, or they went into a portal or something. So yeah, Stonehenge is is very dear to my heart. I just love the place. It's got so much energy, and even visiting back when being an adult, I can see that there is spirit inside the stones. Just, I don't know whether they're guardians or what, but I've even caught them orbs on camera when I've taken pictures of the stones walking in. And let's jump forward to when I was about 6 or 7. And yes, I had started to have lots of spirit experiences then. So I would sense people in my bedroom at night and get absolutely scared. And the only place I would feel safe would be in between my mum and dad in their bed. So I would scream out and cry and have the night terrors and do all that until I managed to get in there, and then I'd sleep. But that happened nearly every night. It was pretty intense. And even though I was scared of it then, when I look back now, there was actually nothing to be scared of. It was spirit coming in. It was both my spirit team and I believe some earthbound spirits on some of the nights as well, probably wanting help, probably could see my light shining and thought she might be able to help us. Yeah, and then as we moved, because we moved around quite a bit when I was a kid. We even went to Australia, actually, from the UK when I was 1.5 until 3, and then we went back again because my mum got homesick. When we moved to Dorset, I was about 8 or 9 when we moved to Dorset. I think it was about 9, actually. Then quite a lot of things started to happen. I mean, it might be that I remembered them, you know, and because I was older. But I remember the house we lived at was very near Thomas Hardy's birthplace, the cottage where he was born. And he was like a writer back in the day, you know, in the 18 something or the others. Anyway, walking down to his house, there was a row of really old cottages, and every time I walked past there, I could sense that I was being looked at by spirit that were in there. And then one time I was actually on an old Roman road that went through the forest there, because there was a big forest that I used to play in as a kid. And there was the old Roman road, and I was on this old Roman road one time, and it was just getting dusk, and I knew I had to get home. So what happened was I started to hear this noise, and this noise got louder and louder and louder until it was all around me. And then I started to get visuals inside my mind. I was scared at the time again, but I could sense that there were marching feet. I could hear horses on cobbles going along. I could hear horses neighing, and this marching sound was so loud as it was all around me. And I could hear like an old wheel on stone going across, so there must have been a wagon. And of course I got the visuals in my mind, and there was a load of Roman soldiers with all their gear marching along the Roman road. But now when I look back, I think I tapped in to that timeline. So I don't know whether it was actual ghosts, but I think because I was in a bit of a daydreamy space, I'd gone into that dimension, because we know that everything's running parallel, don't we, at the same time. Yeah, so that was a very freaky experience, and I ran all the way home. I was so frightened, crying as well, because I didn't understand it at the time. Yeah, I've had my parents used to work in a agricultural college called Kingston Moorwood, and there were 2 big manor houses there. And of course, I used to go in, and if my parents were there, I'd go in, and sometimes I'd be allowed in, but I would play in the grounds there. There was beautiful gardens, and I was one day walking in the garden, and as I was walking along, I sensed that there was a lady walking behind me, just to the side here. I could see her in my mind. Every time I looked round, I couldn't see her, but every time I looked forward, I could see her in my third eye there. And I could see exactly what she was wearing. I mean, I've got this memory so strong even now. She was wearing this beautiful dress, and a beautiful little jacket, and it had frills here, and she had a hat on. She was carrying an umbrella, and she was just strolling along. Now, I do feel that she probably was a ghost, because I also got the feeling that she didn't know I was there, but I knew she was there. And yeah, I got a clear picture of her just walking along, and then she vanished. So yeah, that was pretty amazing. And the senses in that building, it was so old, this building, that when my mum and dad worked there years ago before I was even born, mum told me that, you know, there was tunnels. So there was actually a staircase that you could push back, and you could go down a tunnel to escape outside. And there was another tunnel in there as well. But unfortunately, as time went on and as I grew, they cemented those tunnels up, which was a shame, because I would have loved to have explored those.
Can I add to that romance story? Because this is a story that came to my, well, thanks to you, really, because I totally forgot about it. It's about something related to your Roman experience. I think probably in 2014 or 15, I was sent out by a ufologist here that I met online, and I met this experiencer who lived not too far away from me. And when I think in 1957, he might have been 9-ish at the time. So we didn't have much here back in the day in 1957. And so he was living in a small town, mining town. And behind his house, they were deforesting. So all behind his house, he had these huge sort of piles of wood, lumber here and there. So this was during the weekend. His dad was bilingual, so he understood somewhat, English and French. So he decides to climb these piles of lumber. And when he gets to the top, so he's sort of looking downwards in between two piles of lumber, and he's hearing these voices, but the language didn't make sense to him, neither French nor English. And so he looks down, and what he sees is two humans entirely looking like Roman soldiers.
Wow.
With metallic heads, like helmets on. They were shiny because the light was reflecting on it. They were wearing like sandals with like lace going up to the knee, and they had a short sword on the side of the their hip.
Wow.
And so as soon as he saw these swords, he started panicking, and so he screams and he starts running back. They saw him, and he ran back to his house. And so I'm not sure if he saw the past through a portal somehow, or they could have been like, because I've seen drawings of like centurions, ET-ish, human centurions from Craft. And so from that moment on, he started getting UFOs following him all of his life. One time his daughter was at a party by the lake, and she was getting these messages telepathically saying, take a photo of the sky. Take a photo of the sky. And she didn't want to do it. And eventually she did, because she got tired of it. She took a photo and went back home. And I saw the photo, and so this was on a cell phone, really. And what she saw with that photo taken was a triangle UFO made of light.
Wow, that's so cool. That's awesome.
And
I just love these experiences, honestly. Hearing about them, other people's as well as my own, it's just it fascinates me even now. Yeah,
it really adds to your life, to your the happiness that these things are happening, because you're growing up. There's a lot of conditioning going on, and you think that, okay, is this all that's to life? And that really made me sad that there was nothing magical. As soon as I started with this awakening process, the things that I was learning and experiencing brought me a lot of happiness. And I guess I was glad that I was alive to be able to go through these experiences, because a lot of people don't have the chance to.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it really aligns with our soul, because our soul is multidimensional, and to have these actual experiences, it's comforting in a way, because we know it's a connection to our soul in a way, but it's also a connection to the vastness of creation and all that beautiful energy that goes along with that, and even history. I don't know about you, but I love hearing about historical things and things that have happened in and going to visit places now, like in the UK. There's so many layers of history that some places I go visit, it's like walking through thick denseness, because I can feel it. My body feels it and everything. I just love all that. It's a deeper knowing. It's a deeper understanding of things. It's a more expanded way of thinking about things, and we're not just us. We are so much more. I just love that, and I think eventually that's where humanity is heading, because so many more people now are waking up to their own possibilities and their own true nature and things.
When you were 6, you talked about the fear of knowing that they were in your bedroom. Did you remember seeing them? I've seen a few ghosts, but
no, at the time I don't actually remember seeing anyone, but I could feel them there.
Did you were you afraid? Well, when I knew they were there, I was so afraid I would sleep with my belly against the wall for many years. So I'm not sure if you did that.
Oh yeah, I remember I had a little panda bear, and I used to hug that panda so tight. And I would ask the panda to protect me. And I would be so scared that I would actually put the sheets up over my head, and I would lie there as still as anything, hoping that whatever was in my room didn't see me and didn't come towards me and everything, until eventually I couldn't do it any longer, and then I would scream out for my mum or start crying loud, so they would hear me and come and rescue me and all that. But my mum and dad, bless them, they're in spirit now, but they even though I think my dad was very open, I think my mum was frightened of all that stuff, so she would tell me that it's just your imagination. And I've since found out that often ET experiences or ghost experiences and all that runs in families. So I was thinking about both my parents, and I'm thinking, well, I know that mum was fearful of it, and so she might have had experiences, but she's pushed it away. But dad, he was always fascinated in science fiction, UFO stuff, ET stuff. So he never spoke about believing in any of that stuff. But when I think back, I think he probably actually did, but life takes over. And being the main breadwinner, and having a family to look after and all that. But he was always fascinated in that sort of thing. And I found out since, as being an adult, and my parents seeing me get into this sort of stuff and doing what I do now, as much as they, dad never commented about what I did. I think he was very proud of me, whatever I was going to do anyway. But mum used to say, oh, I don't believe in any of that stuff. And I think it was fearful. But I just carried on, and I would speak to her about things. And then eventually she said to me, and my dad had already passed away, and she said to me, look, I will tell you this. She said, I had an aunt that used to read the tarot cards, and she would actually get knowledge of when someone's going to die, and often find out when, and she was always right. So obviously my mum then felt really fearful about all that because of the connection with death and all that stuff. I mean, I would never do that. I'm a tarot card reader, and I never get that about anyone or anything like that. It's more about helping people move forward and live life to the full. And And then my mum said that actually, she said your father had two aunts that used to go once a week to a seance and to mediumship classes. I went, no wonder I'm like I am. Yeah, because even at school, I made myself fit in to fit in with the other kids, but I always felt totally different. And when I was very young at school, I actually struggled to make friends and everything because I was very different.
Yeah.
Like so many of us are when we're young.
Mm.
Us experiencers.
So okay, after the age of 6, did spirit come to you like more so after that?
Yes, every so often I would get something unusual happen. I always felt, even when I was a kid, I always felt that I wasn't just in this space. I felt, as a child, it's hard to decipher what it was I was feeling, but I always felt that there was magical things, around, even in nature. I always felt that. I believed in fairies. I never saw any that I was aware of, but I always believed in all of that, and that magical stuff that we're allowed to draw and talk about when we're kids, I always actually believed in all that. So I did have fairly magical experiences in nature, just sensing things, not actually seeing anything. I can't remember seeing anything anyway, but sensing things. And then the spiritual ghosty experiences then. But as I moved through life, I think as I grew up, I did have other experiences, but I also then fully blotted it out while I was going through my teenage years. Occasionally would have a spooky experience, even though I was there, but you sort of push it aside and move on with whatever you're doing at the time. And then when I met John, I was still always interested in all that sort of stuff. I used to read all sorts of books about ghost stories and even the horror stories. I went through a stage of reading about that, and science fiction books and all that sort of thing. So I was always into that. But then when I met John, that was a magical experience in itself, because when we met each other, we both looked at each other, and I said to him, it was in a bar in the UK, and I said to him, I know you. And I'd never met him before, but I had such a strong feeling that I knew him from somewhere. And then anyways, he asked me if I would go out. So the next night we arranged to go out for a drink, and we met up in a pub, and we were talking, and we were having this conversation, and I literally saw our spirits or our souls come out of our bodies. So I'm seeing it with my third eye, and start twisting round together like DNA almost, and going up. And we just knew that we were soulmates, whatever. We tried to suss out where we might have met each other before. We just couldn't suss it out. So anyway, 3 months after that we moved in, and then 3 years after that we got married, and we've been married ever since. And as you get busy with life, and we had 2 children, had problems having children. So I think us people that are like this often have a lot of experiences in the human stuff go on, to help us grow, to help us have those experiences, to help us realize who we are and to grow. So yeah, I had several miscarriages before my first baby came along, or our first baby. She's a special girl now. She's in her late 20s. She's very special, so connected to nature, unbelievable. Can sense things when she goes in nature. She'll always ask the forest to show her something when she goes for a walk in the bush, and she will always get guided to somewhere and find something magical to do with nature, like a fungi or something, or birds coming close. And then 2 years after that, I had my son, He's different. He's different than a lot of the other lads his age. He's a very gentle natured person. Very compassionate towards other people and animals and all that, So anyway, when they were kids, we had a few experiences in the house growing up. So one time, I always used to shut the cats, because we have 3 cats, downstairs in the dining room kitchen area. And I'd already put the kids to bed. They were fairly young. They probably would have been about 4 and 6. They were in bed. And anyway, I woke up one night in the middle of the night and the cats were on my bed. And I'm thinking, that something's going on. And in our previous house, we had actually been burgled while we were asleep upstairs. And I'm thinking, oh no, someone's come in the house. So I get up really, really quietly. And I hear voices downstairs. And I'm thinking, oh no. And I'm there on my own because John's working away. So I go and check the kids. They're in bed fast asleep. So I think, right, that's good. So I just slowly creep down the stairs and I see the dining room lights on. The dining room door is open and I can hear music and voices coming from in there. I think that's weird. And then I realize the stereo's on. So I just think that there's no one here now. So I go in, the lights on in the dining room and the kitchen. The stereo is playing. So it was the radio. So I heard voices and then music came on. Then I went in the kitchen and it was just like one of those horror films. Every cupboard and drawer in the kitchen was open. Yeah. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, that's a bit creepy. And logically in my mind at the time, I thought, sometimes illogically as well. I thought, oh, maybe Libby got up and she slept walk and she turned everything on when she came down. But knowing, I just brushed it off really. But now thinking about it, she wouldn't have been able to reach the top cupboards to open them anyway. So, and then in that same house, and I think there's a correlation. I didn't even actually notice the dates, but I think it was roughly about a year apart. She had one of those dolls called Amazing Allie, and it would speak in an American accent. And it would say things like, oh, can you come and play with me? And things like that. And anyway, she'd lost playing with that for a while. And it was right at the bottom of her toy box. And she hadn't played with it for so long, it didn't even work, I thought, anyway. Anyway, I woke up one night and Libby's awake and she's going, Mum, my doll's talking. So I walk in her bedroom and I hear the doll go, hey, do you want to play with me, from the bottom of the toy box? I'm thinking, what? Yeah. So I rumble around in the toy box, get the doll out, and I look, there's no batteries in it. So I'm like, oh, okay. So there's, something spiritual going on here. And again, we just brushed it aside because I didn't want to frighten the kids either. And, and then as we moved on, and from that house, it was from that house that we then decided to move to New Zealand. And that was fate brought us here. So John was working away all the time and, we were fed up with that. He was missing out on the kids growing up. And we decided couldn't think of anywhere else in the UK that we would like to live. So we thought that we would move to Canada where John's brother lives. And we started doing the paperwork and he was going to sponsor us and everything. And then September the 11th happened. And, all the aircraft jobs went. John was an aircraft engineer and still is actually. All the aircraft jobs went. So loads of companies in Canada and America got rid of staff. So we thought, right, we can't do that. And I think John was in, I think he was in Copenhagen, and he phoned me and he said, look, Air New Zealand, I've heard, are looking for people. What do you think? So I said, look, apply for it and we'll see what happens. So we did. And we started getting all the paperwork ready for that. And still, you know, we'd never been to New Zealand before. We hadn't even visited for a holiday or anything like that. And so we were a little bit, especially John, I think. I mean, I felt that it was quite right to do. It was like an adventure. But John was still a bit, you know, is this the right thing? You know, we're upping everyone and going across to the other side of the world. And anyway, we were down on the seafront one day. And I believe that this is one of those earth angel moments that often people have. And the kids were playing on the sand, and this old gentleman came up to John, who was up on the seafront, and he was walking with a walking stick, very slow walking, and I saw them having a conversation. So I went up and just said hello and all that, and he said, oh, my name's Heber. And anyway, I had to go back down to where the kids were on the sand and watch them. And then I saw the old gentleman walk away after a while. John and Heber had this conversation, and I went back up to where John was, and I said, oh, wow, who was he then? That was an interesting name and all that. And he said to me, well, his name's Heber, and he said you'll find me in the Bible. And I said, well, where's he gone? And he said, well, he seemed to have just vanished. He's gone. And I said, right, I'm going to try and find him, because I thought as soon as he said that, I thought, I've got to find him. So I walked up and down the seafront. I went in the only shop that was there, and I couldn't find him anywhere. It was like he'd vanished. So anyway, I went back to where John was, and then John said, yeah, he said that he's in the New Testament. He's under Palm 11, number 11. And we were getting the 11:11s all the time at that time. And I did actually, when we got home, actually looked up the message in the Bible, but I didn't understand it at all. But what Heber had said to John was, just do it. Move. There's nothing here for you. And those words like really penetrated John. You know, I believe he was an earth angel, came down here to reassure John that actually everything was going to be fine when we moved to New Zealand. And now, of course, after living in New Zealand for 18, 19 years, I realized that everything unfolded and slotted into place. And it was fate that drew us here, because as soon as we arrived here, about, I don't know, 6 months after we'd been here, through a set of circumstances, I was getting the nudge from spirit. Get into your spiritual stuff. Get into your spiritual stuff. And through a set of circumstances, I found a spiritual group, and things unfolded. I became a healer. I started doing readings and all that stuff, and having magical experiences here, which was wonderful. Meeting some awesome people here too. And over the years here, I have spoken to lots of different people that have also been drawn here, and they have no idea why. But when they came here, a similar thing happened. It was like they grew, they opened up, they expanded. And when I first came here as well, I noticed that the plant life here, the life force in the nature here is huge. It was like the plants were glowing with life force. So I do think it's a pretty magical country, New Zealand. Never go back now to the UK for visits, but not to live. There's many other places in the world I would love to visit, you know, as well, especially all the spiritual places. I would love to go visit some of the spiritual places. But yeah, I've been back to the UK, I think about 4 times since being here to visit family. And wherever I go on holiday, I end up working and doing spiritual work. And so one time I went back to stay with my mum, and my mum lives very near a place called Maiden Castle, and it's about 5,000 or 6,000 years old, or even before that. And you know, there's evidence of man living there. And then the Romans, when the Romans took over, there's evidence of them there. There's a temple there. And I was walking one day, because I used to like going up there even when I lived in Dorset, and went up there just to feel the wind in my hair and have a good walk and do some meditation. And I was walking along up there, and it's all grass now. And as I was walking along, I all of a sudden heard this woman scream, and it was like so loud that I'm actually looking around and thinking, what on earth is going on? And then I'm still walking on grass in this dimension, but I find myself in another dimension. And I then start to see that even though I know that I'm walking on grass, I start to see that the grass has turned to a muddy track. There are huts either side. I can hear people chinking metal. I can hear people talking. I can hear animals. And as I walk down like through this muddy track in between these huts, and again, I'm aware that I'm still walking on grass in this dimension, but this is what I'm seeing. It's like a video playing out in front of me. I then hear this scream again, and it's blood-curdling scream. And I just knew that this woman needed help and that she was stuck there. So what I decided to do there and then was luckily had some crystals in my pocket. So I called in all my team. I called in the energies of north, south, east, west, all the elements and everything. And I actually walked north, south, east, west across the top of the grass plateau. And I called in everyone to free this woman who was trapped. And went to the Roman temple that was there, and there was still a that's in the temple, an altar still there. And to be honest with you, it looked like a slab, like someone would be, sacrificed on or something. That's what it looked like. So anyway, I did a big clearing in there, and I cleared her over, and I knew I had. Because then I got guided, and I didn't send you these pictures because I'd forgotten about this. I got guided to take pictures with my camera, and it was quite a cloudy day. And in the pictures, when I got back to my mum's and I put it on my iPad and I had a look at the pictures. There was a picture of, you could class him as like a god-like face or a Viking-like face, because there's a man's face with a big beard, sort of coming out of the clouds in cloud color, I will say. So it's all in cloud color. There's also another cloud which I managed to pick up, which is a wizard's hat, and then like a vortex of cloud underneath it with like an arm coming out and a wand. And I knew immediately that was Merlin, because I'm in Merlin's lands, and that was Merlin energy that had come in to help with the clearing. And then there was this other strange looking figure, which I feel possibly could have been ET, but it was like they're wearing a uniform, but I feel like it was like an ET of some sort. And so I know that all those energies had come in to help me move this lady over that had been trapped for goodness knows how many years. Poor woman. And then when I walked away from the actual castle, and you had to go through a gate to get out of it, I could actually feel myself coming out of or walking out of a thick energy. And it was almost like as my leg came out, it closed up again. So there's probably a load more energy there that needs clearing, but that was the only bit that I was called to do that day. That was fascinating. That was a fascinating experience. Yeah.
So when did the ET stuff, did anything like ET related happen to you as a kid? Or as soon as you got to New Zealand when everything kicked in?
I can't really remember as a kid. Like I said, I used to get lots of visitors. So some of those may have been ET, because I only sensed them. I didn't see them. And in a way, I think that if I'd have seen someone, it might have been better because then I would have had something to actually visualize, but not being able to see makes it more scary, because your mind then takes over and what is it, and all that stuff. So I possibly could have. But when the ET stuff started happening, after I'd been doing my spiritual work for quite a long time, I had not really thought much about ET stuff, to be honest. It was more spirit, more about guides and connecting into spiritual realms and all that. And then it was a house sort of we lived in just outside of Auckland in a place called Beachlands. And, at night, just to let the dogs out for their last minute wee, I would go out and I'd stand up and look up at the sky. And sometimes I'd take my camera and take pictures, and there'd be orbs there. And I knew there was a portal open over that house, because we used to get spirit come down and all sorts of things. But then I started noticing like flash bulbs. That's what I call them. And I didn't really know what they were, but I just thought maybe that was spirit. I started noticing them every so often. And then one night I'd actually been to a spiritual workshop all day. And that evening we were going to go and round a friend's house for lunch, for dinner that night, John and I. And we were round their house in the evening, and we were just sat there watching, talking over their dining room table. We'd all eaten, and behind my friends was a ranch slider, and the curtains were open, and it was a summer evening, and I could see a plane go, and I could see a couple of stars. And John was sat next to me here, and then I could sense that the atmosphere in the room started to change, and I thought, oh, something's happening. I think spirit must be coming in. Then the light above my friend started going absolutely crazy, flashing on and off. And I thought, there's something going on here. So I wanted to go and see if the lights in the hallway were going on off. The friends that we with are not into this stuff at all, so I couldn't say anything about any of that. So I walked, I just said, oh, I'm going to go to the bathroom. I went in, and the hall lights were flickering. The bathroom light was flickering. I thought, right, there's something going on here. And again, I'm still thinking it's spirit. So I come back and sit down, and I'm staring in between the two friends, the light's still going crazy. And literally for about 10 seconds, I see this little grey staring at me back through the window. And I thought, whoa, this is fascinating. I knew immediately it was ET. I didn't feel frightened at all. I felt very calm. And then I got the impression put in my mind, we're watching you. And I thought, wow, this is awesome. So I couldn't say anything until me and John got out of the house. And then I said to him, did you see anything then when the light was flashing? He didn't see anything. Then I told him what I'd seen. And then after that, of course, I just wanted to find out everything I possibly could about ET stuff. So I'm online looking, going out at night. Again, I'm seeing these flash bulbs. And then when I'm working working as a healer, I have my own healing practice. So I have clients coming regularly. And I would start to see beings that would come in that didn't look humanoid. Anyway, put it that way. So one time I'm doing a healing session on a friend of mine who's a medium, and I'm doing a healing session. And while we're in the session, this aquatic being comes in, which you've got a picture of. And he stands the other side of the table, and the unconditional love that's just radiating out from him is so beautiful. Honestly, it just, it was just amazing. It's so amazing. It makes you want to cry. It's that unconditional love. So anyway, I'm fully aware that he just stands there for a while, and then eventually he goes, and then we finish the healing. And I just said to my friend, did you feel anyone with us? And she said, yes, I did. And I said, can you explain who you saw? And she explained who she saw, and it's exactly who I saw standing the other side of the table, which I've drawn. And I realize that he is an aquatic being because he's got sort of webbed ears and he's got something here. And I'm going to jump ahead a little while now. Mary Rodwell, who's Australia's ET lady, she actually used the drawing I did in one of her presentations talking about aquatic beings, because at that time, not many people had contact with aquatic beings. So anyway, coming back to that time, after me seeing that little grey looking in the window, about roughly about 3 months afterwards, I had this, I think she was Arcturian. I really feel she was an Arcturian lady, feminine energy, come in and stand like a hologram in the corner of my healing room. And I could see that she was wearing a uniform of some sort that looked like she had sort of square shoulders. And again, the gown went right the way down to the ground. I could see that she was very, very slim, no fat on her at all or anything like that. She was very, very slim, very, very slim arms and hands. And she had some sort of thing on here, and she had this like headdress thing on. And I knew her head was very up and out at the back, but she had a headdress on over it. Anyway, as every time, this happened for about 3 months. As I was working on my clients, she would be in the room and she would show me the energetics of the body and what I could do to make adjustments in this person's field. And she also showed me that I could draw things down and work with them in the energy field. She guided me that I needed to sing while I'm doing healings and speak light language, because I was getting downloads of light codes. I'd been getting them for quite a long time. So she said, she didn't say it, but she could put the impression in my head that you need to sing. And I realize now that the singing, so I don't sing words, but it's more like toning singing. The singing raises the vibration in the room, but also of the person that I'm working on and of myself. So, and then when I speak light codes, I actually see codes coming down from the field, going into the body and activating that person. So she taught me so much about there's no barriers to what you can do and what you can tap into when you're a healer, or even if you're not a healer, because I believe everybody's a healer anyway. There are no barriers. You just got to sort of understand your own multidimensional self or power that you hold. And it's not even a conscious thing. It's, if you allow yourself to expand, then your energy field changes. Your DNA automatically starts to activate anyway. And I believe she activated my DNA, and also the downloads of light codes that I get. I still get them now, but they come differently now. But when I was getting them back then, I would literally see, I'd be asleep and I would see these codes being written like this in line after line after line, and they'd vanish from the top as they were still being written at the bottom. And they were all in pure light with a black background. And then I would wake up and I'd still see them all being written. So I knew it was a download of information. And I can honestly say, I don't consciously understand what that information is. But I do know that it's adjusting me and my multidimensional self and my field to be more expansive, to be activated, if you like. So I know it's light information that's coming in and adjusting me in some way, but I don't consciously know in what way. So I've been getting them very regularly over the years. I believe they are from ET, but I also believe that ET and the higher realms of the spirit world work together anyway. So it's from that space that these codings come. Now, when I get them, they literally come as 3 or 4 or even 5 sometimes flashes of bright white light, which go straight into my consciousness and wake me up, and they're still happening. And I know it's like instant information coming in that's adjusting me in some way. I mean, I even last night I had one, 2 nights ago I had one, last week I had some more. So I'm being adjusted in some way now on a regular basis, even more so than what I was, I think. And I can only surmise that it's for the work that I'm doing, but also the work I'm yet to do, because I believe that many of us, whether we're active healers now or we've just got healing energy in our field and we don't even know it, are going to be doing a lot of work as time unfolds over the next few years, because things are changing here and we can all see it. We're never going to go back to a normal of what we knew before the COVID thing. We are heading into a time now of full consciousness expansion. And once we start doing that, we know that we can tap into all of these other realms and other dimensions. And it's like the veils are becoming so thin now that everything is coming down into one timeline or one dimension. And when we finally reach that time, I actually feel that we'll be interacting with these beings regularly, like as if it was always happening. That spirit as well as ET. So yeah, when going back to the ET stuff, yeah, she taught me for about 3 months, roughly, twice while she was teaching me. A human man was brought in, not physical form, his astral form was brought in to stand by the table to learn whatever she was teaching me that day. And I can't actually remember what it was that day. Twice he was brought in, and I knew that he was somewhere asleep on this planet, and that it was his astral form that was brought in. Yeah, and I don't know him. I don't know him. He had very tan skin, so I don't think he was possibly from New Zealand. I kind of felt like he might have been from South America somewhere, but I don't know for sure. I just felt that he might be from there. But yeah, twice he was brought in to learn whatever it was. So yeah, that was fascinating. And then from that moment on, things just developed big time. I was seeing flash bulbs regularly. I remember one time John and I went for a night walk up to, it's called Duda's Point, and it's a little point that goes out with sea sort of around it, and you can see little towns in the distance, and you can see Auckland in the distance. And anyway, we went up there for a night walk. We took a flask and we sat up there, and because it's up high, you're actually very closer to the stars. And it was a beautiful, clear night. And we're sat there, we're having a coffee. So I just said to John, oh, let's see if my friends are around. So I said, give me the torch. So he gave me the torch. And he was sitting on the fence about all this stuff then. And so I did 3 flashes up, because normally when I get a flash bulb, it's in 3, and I believe that's a craft. They're just letting me know they're there. So I did 3 flash with the torch. Nothing happened. In my mind, I'm going, please, guys, if you're there, please show up. Just do something so we know that you're there. And again, I did it again. Nothing happened. And I'm going, please, please turn up. He needs to see, you know, that something's going on. And then I did it one more time. And I thought, right, well, this is it. Last time. Did 3 flashes with the torch up into the sky. And literally, just as the 3rd flash stopped, it was like 3 massive flash bulbs that were very low down, went poo, 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 and were moving off. So I knew it was a craft right above us. So I said to John, tell me what that is. He's an engineer, John is. Tell me what that is. And he said, I cannot explain that at all. Yeah, so that was cool. And then as we were walking back down, I just got guided to turn around. So we stopped and we turned around and we looked across the sea at the view. And literally, because we know that ET can show up sometimes looking like a shooting star, their craft. Literally, a shooting star went from one side right the way over, perfect one, straight the way over. And I just knew that was something magical. They were acknowledging, you know, yeah, we're here.
When the I've interviewed a few people that when they would do Reiki or energetic healing, an entity would come in, but the entity would work with them through them to send energy.
Yes, I've had that happen. I've had that happen back there when I had my healing practice then, and I've also had it happen here. So every time it's happened here, what I've experienced is that some very, very tall light beings come in and stand around the bed. But when this happens, I seem to be one of these light beings. So I'm in that group, that circle of light beings. But then in front of me, actually working on the person, I haven't seen the full embodiment of the being, but I've seen what looks like ET hands that are moving the energy of the person. And I know that there is a row of little ETs that are working the energy on the person. And it's these tall light beings that are overseeing everything to make sure that everything, you know, is done properly. But it's like the ETs, the hands that I see of these little ET beings, it's like they're sort of doing the work, but the tall light beings are the energy is coming through them, if you like. It's hard to explain. And what I've since, I don't know whether I saw it on a podcast or whether I was watching something on YouTube or whether I read it in a book, but it was fairly recent. And what I read was that ET, that really, you know, expanded higher vibrational ET beings, have made like little organic beings that look like little greys, and that they use these little grey beings to come down here in the 3D because they can't handle the denseness. So they've made these little grey e-beings to come down here and show themselves sometimes to people to do some work, whatever needs doing, because they can't. It's impossible for them because it's so dense in this dimension that we're in for them. So that's what I read, and I thought, wow, that actually fits really right. So these light beings are probably these interdimensional beings, and they've got these little grey beings that are down here moving the energy on the person and doing the work. Yeah, fascinating. I've had that happen a lot when they've come in and I see them. And one time I had a lady who was a client of mine. She messaged me and she said, I'm really, really nervous. I didn't know who else to contact. Can you please contact me? Because tomorrow I'm going in to have my thyroid removed. Right. I've had mine removed. So she knew that I had. So she must have thought, I'll phone Ginny because she's had it done. I'll message Ginny. So she messaged me and I said, look, don't worry. What I'll do is I'll ask my team to come and support you through the whole thing. So I literally did. I sent that text back to her. I said to her, don't worry, everything's going to go smoothly. I'm going to send my team in to oversee things and make sure everything's right. So I literally said to my team, please, can you go and help her through this operation and just make sure that everything's right? And she's supported. So, I mean, I didn't get an answer back. I just immediately think, because I know our teams are there and that we only need to ask and they're there to help us. So anyway, a couple of days afterwards, she messaged me and she said, thank you so much. She said, as I was coming around from the anesthetic, I saw these tall light beings around the bed. And one of them said to me, Ginny sent us. And I was blown away by that myself, you know, thinking, wow, thank you so much. Thank you. So blessed. Yeah. So we all have our guides. We all have our teams. I've even had a healing from ET. I know it was ET that did it. And I'll just briefly tell you about that if you like. I had fractured my ankle in 2 places. 3 months later, there was a CE5 event I really wanted to go to, and there's no way I wanted to miss it. So I said to ET, as I got into bed at night, I said, please heal my foot, heal my ankle. Please heal. And then I'd had the temporary cast on then, and I'd had the x-rays. I'd found 2 fractures. I had to go back a week later, excuse me. I had to go back a week later to get a proper, 6-week cast put on. Excuse me, I've got a tickly throat. So I went back a week later, had a pink one put on. I had to pick pink. And then a week later after that, I had to go back in and have another x-ray to see what was happening. When I went back in for that other x-ray, they could not find any fractures whatsoever. So I knew that I'd been healed. Yeah, it was brilliant.
I've had a lot of people that came on with stories regarding ETs healing them, orbs coming in through their body, healing their toe, glaucoma that disappeared, back problems that would go away, stuff like that. So
fascinating, isn't it?
You sent me a really nice photo.
It really is fascinating.
A drawing of a guardian. Remember that one?
Yes, so that's nature being, I believe.
You sent me one with there's one, I think, a guardian with the trees. You see trees, but also nature beings.
Yes.
There's 2 of them. So
yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the guardian first. I believe.
Okay. Yeah. So the guardian is actually connected to those nature beings. So I was actually on a CE5 one night at a CE5 event here in New Zealand, and we'd gone in and done our CE5 thing. We'd had quite a lot of activity actually that night, including a ground flash, craft coming down and then going off in a different direction. Beings on the ground as well. We could actually hear them walking and stuff. around the group. There was one point where there were we actually felt a ring of beings around us as we were sat in our circle. Excuse me. Anyway, so at the break, so we have a break, and you always go off in either pairs or threes. Never be on your own, because you don't know what you're going to encounter. Not in a scary way, but you need witnesses if you're going to have an experience. So I think it was about 5 of us decided we'd go for a walk in the bush, pitch black. So we walked down this lane, and actually previous that day, we'd gone for a walk in that afternoon, and I'd come to a spot in the forest as we walked through, and I thought, this is a magical spot. There's something going on here. I didn't know whether it might have been an elemental energy of the fairy folk or something like that in this spot. But I just sensed it was a really magical spot. And before we got there, because often when I go walking in the bush, I will get messages with like twigs that are crossed in my front of my pathway, or it's almost like light language, but it's written in twigs, 2 or 3 bits. And I know that it's been put there for me to see. I know this sounds a bit weird, but I just know it. So I'd also seen 2 of them as we were leading down to that park, that place in that afternoon walk. So anyway, we're in the dark there that night. We're walking down that pathway, and we try not to use torches because eventually your eyes do acclimatize. So we're walking down. One of the guys in the group said, oh, I'm going to just stay here and see if I can make contact. So he stayed there on his own. The 4 of us carried on down, and we stood in this place. We didn't even know where we were, but we stood there, and then all of a sudden we could feel this energy coming around us, and it was like really strong and powerful. And one of the guys said to me, can you feel that? And I said, yes, I can. And he said, can you see anything? And I said, well, I can just sense there's a very strong presence there. And then I got an image of who I drew to you. Very strong, tall presence. And he said, that is the guardian. I went, oh. And he said, just look beyond that. So I did. I looked beyond that with my third eye, because everything's pitch black. So I kind of looked beyond that, and I saw a sea of little faces that were watching us from the bush. So I'm seeing this with my third eye, and I'm going, whoa, there's loads of little beings watching us. And he said, yes. So we sensed that there was something happening. So we just held hands, the 4 of us, and then we heard 2 footsteps walking down the path in front of us, quite fast, like that. And we thought, is that Doug? That was our friend that had stayed at the top of the path. So we said, a couple of us said, is that you, Doug? No answer. And the footsteps are still coming closer. Doug, is that you? No answer at all. 3rd time, Doug, is that you? No answer. So we know that he would have answered us by then. The footsteps came down and stood right in front of us. So we just stood there, and one of the guys thought that this little being was here to connect with. There was a young lad stood next to me this side to connect with him. So we just stood there, and we opened our hearts up, because, you just got to do that when you're out. You really got to open your heart up, just send out unconditional love. So we did that, and we stayed there with this little being in front of us for a little while, until we felt the energy change again. We didn't hear footsteps moving away, so they must have just disappeared in front of us. And then we walked back up to where our friend was, and he was still having an experience with a little being. And so after discussing it all and really sussing out what it was, we believe that these are nature beings, and they look a little bit like tiny ETs, but instead of having the almond-shaped eyes, they've got oval-shaped eyes, rounded shaped eyes. They've still got the long fingers, and they're, rather than a grey colour, they're more like a sort of a creamy sort of grey colour, if you like, or a creamy white sort of colour. And they are here looking after nature. They're here looking after all the elementals and the natural world. And they literally are like the guardians of nature. And I feel like they're here all the time. The tree that I drew in the picture is a piriri tree, which I think is the equivalent of an oak tree in the UK. It's like the New Zealand oak tree, but it's called a piriri tree. And I do believe that around the piriri tree, and probably several other trees, but around the piriri tree, there can be like a portal or something that's open. There's something magical about them anyway. They're ancient, they're very ancient trees. And there's something magical about the piriri tree. I can't explain what it is. I just feel it. And when we went back the next day to have a look at that spot where we had that experience with those beautiful little nature beings, there was a piriri tree right there. Yeah. So, So now, when I go in nature, and we know that they're there, and they don't often present themselves, because you can be going for a walk in nature and this can happen to anyone, and it might not be a windy day, but there might be a leaf or a branch on a tree that's moving, or a leaf that's moving, no wind. So we know that the wind's not causing it to move. So if you spot things like that, you're probably not on your own. It's them just saying, we're here. And then those formations of twigs, which if you look on the ground, and I think you'll know if it's something magical, or a sign of some sort. Like a friend of mine who was in that group of 4 or 5 that were in the bush that day, he connects with nature beings on his property where he lives. And he went in there one day and he found, for him to find, they must have left it. No one else can go on his property either. It's private property. A weaved circle of weaved grasses in a little circle that is about this big, near where he sits to meditate. So we know it was from them, So when you go in the bush, you're probably not going to be on your own. So I'm talking to everyone who's listening or will listen to this. You're probably not going to be on your own. I've had other people that are very spiritual go for walks in the bush, and they've had magical experiences in different ways. Like one lady, she was walking around a lake here in New Zealand, quite a magical lake with quite a lot of history, and she heard a flute being played in the forest. Now that is a Maori flute, and that is a sign of the fairy folk, the Maori fairy folk, so fairy folk in the forest. And you're really blessed if you actually hear that flute. Actually, the same lady, she was walking in the bush again, round another lake actually, and she saw a very large white owl sitting in the tree above her. So the owls in New Zealand are actually tiny. So she's had quite a few magical experiences in nature, and several other people I know also. So wherever you are on this planet and you go into nature, or you just connect with a tree, know there is far more connected to that nature or that tree than what we're seeing in this dimension.
I love hugging trees.
Yeah, me too.
It's hard to let go, really. There's a connection and you feel good.
There is.
Yeah. I had this dream once. It only happened once, but I was introduced on a soul level. I don't know where I am, but I'd say I'm perhaps a few inches tall.
Yes.
I'm on the ground. The grass all around me is tall. And I remember seeing like a fallen tree going down at an angle, and I'm being introduced to the little people. I don't remember seeing them, but I know they're not tall, and they're all around me.
Yeah.
And that's what I remember. And of course, I woke up the next morning. Have you ever seen shadow people? That's a theme that tends to come back.
Shadow people?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
for some, it's the Hat Man. For me, it was a 6 foot tall, huge entity with broad shoulders and a helmet. So.
Yeah. Oh, actually, in my dream that I explained before, but they were shorter than me. They were dark figures, which looked like they had some form of uniform type thing on. So I had that. I believe that, you know, when we're dreaming, we actually are taken off in our astral form and have an experience, especially if it's a dream that you really, really remember solidly, like it happened. So this one time I'm dreaming and I'm with another woman, and we find ourselves in this like underground or tunnels. I don't even know if they were underground, but it was like tunnels, dark, everything's dark. But you can see little glimmers, so you can actually see a little bit. And the tunnels were lined with figures, which were, I'm nearly 6 foot, close to it, and they were about 5 foot tall, because I was aware that they were shorter than me, and they were dressed in like dark, shadowy figures, but like I sensed like there was some sort of uniform or something they were wearing, and they were literally lined these tunnels. And then I realized I was actually underwater. And then you have that brief moment of, oh my God, how am I going to breathe? And then one of the beings brought this like energetic thing and placed it in my throat. And I had to make some form of adjustment in my throat to then be able to breathe underwater, which I managed to do. And so did the lady that I was with, who I don't recognize, and made this adjustment so we could breathe underwater. And then we got put into our consciousness that we had to find our way out. It was like a test. We had to find our way out. We passed one bit of the test because we actually didn't go into fear, and we'd allowed this thing into our throat so we could breathe underwater. And then anyway, so we had to walk down these tunnels, and we used our intuition, and eventually we came to a ladder that went up this wall, which we walked up, and it was like a hatch at the top. And as we came out through the hatch, I woke up. But I've spoken to other people like Mary Rodwell and some other people, and they said, yes, often you will get tested. And sometimes it happens in dream state. Sometimes it happens like someone might be abducted and they don't remember it, but then under hypnosis, things come back, you know. And yes, often we're tested. And I think Because I know ET don't want us to be fearful of them. And I think sometimes these tests are to see if you go into fear or if you will allow things to unfold naturally and just go with it. And I think that was one of those tests to see whether we would go into fear and panic and, oh my God, I can't breathe, and all that stuff, whereas we didn't. And we found our way out. But it was so profound that, I remember it even now, like really well, as if it really happened.
You've talked about pregnancies earlier.
Yes.
Any like phantom pregnancies, perhaps?
I've never had a phantom pregnancy, but I have had 4 miscarriages altogether.
I know a lot of doctors, when they do checkups, they do find like internal scarring. So that's like a given, really, that something happened.
Yes.
Okay. Do you have anything else that you wanted to share? Or perhaps a closing statement?
Well, look, I would want to thank you so much for inviting me on. I can see that you're another fellow star being, and I can sense you've got the most beautiful energy as well. And I would just like to say to everyone that's watching, please know that ET are not here to frighten us. And the more that you keep your own vibration raised, feeling love, feeling joy, feeling gratitude, and all of those things, you're going to automatically connect with higher frequency beings. It's all down to where your own vibration is. Often if you're low or you're depressed or things like that, and we all get moments of that, then you might attract lower density energies. But if you just, I would say, have full awareness of your own energy, where you're at yourself, because you can change it. We are powerful beings. We are so powerful. And if we allow our mind to take over when our mind is in perhaps a negative space, then you can dive into that hole. But if you are aware and you start to think or feel like that, you can stop it and go, hang on a minute, I'm not going to let that consume me. I am going to now start thinking about all the people in my life that I love, all the pets that I've got. I'm going to feel gratitude for the roof over my head, the car that I drive, the fact that I have a meal on the table, that I'm able to go to the supermarket and buy food, or I've got food that comes to me in whatever way. Even the smallest little things, that you've got a lovely comfortable quilt that you can snuggle up under. Just having gratitude for all these things is going to automatically switch your frequency to one of expansion, and you're sending that message out to the universe and out to your guides, so that when the moment you have gratitude, joy, and an expanded heart, you're going to actually start to attract all those wonderful things back to you. And it's just a case of changing the mind, of not allowing yourself to get swept up with all of the stuff that's going on out there at the moment, and try and just, even if you might listen to everything that's going on, but don't give it any energy. Protect your own field and be in that space of beautiful unconditional love and joy and gratitude. And honestly, you will just ride this wave of this human stuff like a surfer on the top of a wave, and it will be awesome, and you will just attract good things.
Beautifully said. You're definitely an amazing soul. So thank you so much for coming on tonight. It's been fun.
Thank you so much.
So to those watching, hope you enjoyed tonight's show. I'm your host, Mr. Great. More interviews coming up, and I'll see you guys next time. So take care, everyone. Hello, everyone. This is Mr. Great, and thanks for watching today's episode. If you are an abductee, contactee, or experiencer, and you believe that your story could help others, please feel free to contact me through my YouTube channel email. When it comes to experiencers, the ET phenomena, and the future, remember, truth will out.